It's Bourbon Festival 2011, and we're at Four Roses Distillery for Let's Talk Bourbon. And here's a man that not only talks about bourbon, but he's writing about bourbon in his new book called Bourbon Blues. It's Hans Offringa. He's come all the way from the Netherlands. Welcome to Bourbon Festival.
Well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you, and what an exciting thing. You're launching your book at Bourbon Festival.
Well, the topic is bourbon, so what could be a better place than the Bourbon Festival? And there's a specific reason we launched it here at Four Roses, because master distiller Jim Rutledge has been a friend for years, and he not only contributed as an editor, but he wrote the foreword for the book. So, I mean, that's why we launched the book over here.
Now, here you are, a whiskey enthusiast from the Netherlands, and you've written about two very American things. How did that happen?
Well, part of it has to do with my natural curiosity. I've been a journalist for many, many years, and I started to write books. But my spouse is American. She's a Southern belle from South Carolina, and we work together. We are known in the whiskey world as the whiskey couple. So she infused me with a lot of American icons, of which Bourbon Blues are two. I've always liked. At 18, I got my first bourbon, which was a Four Roses accidentally. I used to play bass in a blues band. Not too successful. I'm a better writer than a musician, but I love the blues. I've been loving the blues since I was a kid. Yeah.
So the concept of this book has probably always been brewing inside of you from the time you were playing some music, enjoying music, and enjoying your first whiskey, which you said was Four Roses. How did you go about writing the book from there out?
Well, I had already done a series of whiskey books, and a few years ago I launched Whiskey and Jazz, which paired 10 single malts with 10 famous jazz musicians. I was pondering, I like jazz, but I love the blues. That's the distinction I made. So I always wanted to write a book on bourbon too. I had done several on Scottish whiskey, blends as well as single malts. And then the opportunity arose, and I suddenly thought, why not do a similar thing, what I did with Whiskey and Jazz, but do it with Bourbon and Blues. And at the time, Jim Rutledge picked up a copy of Whiskey and Jazz, and he said to me, Hans, you should do something with bourbon. And I said, well, it's in the works. And that's what it started. So 2 years ago, I set up the draft. A year ago, I sent the first manuscript to Jim, and he assessed it for me, and he took out some obvious mistakes I made, and he taught me a lot, like other distillers here. So it's been a wonderful ride for the last 2 years, and now finally it's there. I'm so happy to present it at the Kentucky Bourbon Festival.
Well, it's very exciting, and it's very exciting to have you here, and I can't wait to read the book. It looks like a beautiful book, all about two American icons of bourbon and blues.
And blues.
Do you get much bourbon and blues in the Netherlands?
Well, I'm advocating bourbon in the Netherlands, Belgium, Germany, because they tend to drink more Scotch. And for me, it's bourbon, Scotch, Irish. It's all whiskey, but they're different brews, and you can't compare them. It's like white wine and red wine. They're made from the same ground material, grapes in that particular case. It's the same with the different whiskies of the world. So I teach people, notice the difference between a single malt, an Irish pure pot still, a bourbon, and we also present the Tennessee whiskies because they are a class of their own. And it's my goal to convince people who drink Scotch they should have their bourbon in their liquor cabinet too.
Can you find Four Roses bourbon in the Netherlands?
Yeah, Four Roses is the best-selling bourbon in the Netherlands. Really? Not only in the Netherlands. Germany is big on bourbon. They are more advanced direction bourbon than we are. And I think that has to do with a lot of GIs are stationed in Germany. And they want their own stash of bourbon available. And then they deal it out to friends they make in Germany. So the Germans picked up bourbon much faster than the Dutch did.
And you're working to make bourbon even more popular in the Netherlands and in Europe.
Every day, every day.
Where can people find your book if they're watching and they want a copy?
Well, the easiest thing is go to thewhiskeycouple.com, and you'll see a little picture of the cover on the right-hand corner of our website. You can immediately order it from our website and pay by credit card or whatever, and it'll be sent to you in a couple of days.
Wonderful. Well, congratulations again. Wonderful to have you here at the Bourbon Festival.
Thank you very much. It's been fun. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much.